Imagine spending millions of dollars on automation, equipment, and systems to find out it's not as effective or efficient as you thought it might be. When you make an investment, you want to maximize your return. And when it comes to operations, you want to minimize your risk as much as possible. In this conversation with Nivedita Ojha, co-founder of Kamit AI, and Drew Thomas, founder of Onero Technologies, originally broadcast live on LinkedIn, we discuss what the current automation landscape looks like, roadblocks around making that initial investment, and scaling automation projects, as well as how Kamit AI is helping companies be more confident in their investments and pinpoint exactly where they are losing the effectiveness and efficiency. If you want to maximize your investment and get the most out of your operation, this is the episode for you.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
All right. Hello. On this Tuesday, we are live here for the New Warehouse Podcast weekly live edition. And today I'm excited for this conversation because we're going to talk about something that is very important when you're investing. You want to maximize that investment, right? But we're going to talk a little bit too about a company that I'm excited about, Kamit AI, as I'm on their strategic advisory board. But today I am going to be joined by Drew Thomas, who is the founder and president of Onero Technologies. Also, I think he's going by that supply chain automation guy, I think, too, I see as well. Right, Drew?
Yeah, I'll take that. I'm good with that. So I'm coming to you live today from Pack Expo here. So I'll keep myself on mute most of the time.
All right, awesome. So he's on the floor there at Pack Expo as well. And then also going to be joined by Nivedita Ojha, who is the CEO and co-founder at Kamit AI. Nivedita, how are you today?
I'm good, and I'm coming from San Francisco, and I'm super excited. Like Kevin already mentioned, he's on an advisory board, and Drew is an amazing design partner for us. So I'm just super excited to be in this conversation.
Absolutely. Happy to be talking about this and getting this out into the world. So our topic today, title is Maximizing Your Automation Investment, and we're going to dive into a little bit about current landscape of automation, the perception of automation out there, some of maybe the roadblocks, hesitations around automation, and then talk a little bit about how it interacts with other systems and equipment that you have in your operation too, and get some use cases and stories here from the field from both Drew and Nivedita as well. But Drew, you're at Pack Expo there, so I mean you are kind of on the forefront of what's happening right now in automation. I'm sure you're seeing some interesting things this week. So why don't you give us maybe your perspective, kick it off with kind of the current landscape of automation in the operations arena.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, the current landscape of automation is pretty dynamic, honestly, right now at this point in time, because there's just a multitude of technological changes that are happening, especially with the advancement of AI forms, large language models, machine learning. I was standing at the booth just before this conversation watching a Kawasaki robot running on a Mugen software platform that using AI was able to miss a couple of obstacles that they had put in its way. So it's something that would be very, very difficult in the past to program, and it's make things really exciting these days from a technological standpoint for the landscape of automation. So it's evolving really quick, but the biggest thing is being able to get software and hardware that's easier for the end users to maintain and to get insight into what's occurring with the hardware and software that they put in their operations. That's one of the biggest changes now. They don't have to rely on super technical, high dollar folks to come in and fix the problems that occur in the warehouse whenever you put an automation system in, and not just the warehouse, but production facilities as well, like you see here at Pack Expo.
Very interesting, and that sounds like a cool demo there too of that navigation and avoidance of obstacles. Interested to see more about that. How about Nivedita? What about from your point of view and your view on the space right now? What would you say kind of the current landscape of automation is, and what stands out to you?
So actually, Kevin, great question. The origination of Camet is because of having spoken to 300 plus customers who were looking at investing or have already invested in robots and machines. And as we all know, that one of the biggest challenges in the industry, specifically in production industry, whether it's upstream in the manufacturing or even just basic warehousing of e-commerce, is we're going through a period where there's a labor shortage. And so everybody is in this bandwagon of going automated. However, the challenge here that happens is, like Drew mentioned, it's a hardware, it's a software, and then everything that's been created today is still running in a silo. But the truth is, when you bring these, whether it's a Kawasaki robot or whether it's that's a mere AGV or AMR or whatever system that you're bringing in with the WMS or MES or a labor system, they all need to work together. And I know we talk about interop. Actually, more than interop, the terminology that I'd like to use is interdependency. There's incredible amount of interdependency. And that is where there is a breakdown. There are silos, and that is when the problem happens. And so time and time again, everybody's very, focused on getting a machine into the hands of a manufacturing or a warehouse. However, they're thinking less of how this machine is going to work in that holistic environment with other machines, other systems, and humans. And especially, I want to put in the human piece of it. I know we talk about Camet AI. However, every calibration of a machine is still done by a human. It's not automated. Yeah, you can get to an automated phase. However, that'll come when there's enough data coming in and there's better understanding of this interdependency. So for now, humans are very much in the loop, so you cannot take anybody out. However, we need to break these silos to get an efficient running of the system. And that is the challenge that we see today.
Very interesting there. And I think that, I think supply chain in general, I think that's always been an issue. And you hear that a lot around the silos there as you use that word. And, how do we start to, it's been around people, I guess, traditionally in a sense, right? But you're saying, how do we tackle that from an automation perspective, system perspective as well, and have these things kind of communicate and be together there. Drew, you want to add something there?
Yeah, Camet's a great example of how we are just swimming in data in these facilities. And as Nivedita was saying, the interdependency between all these systems has historically been disjunctive. It's been separated between them. And what Camet's doing is bringing them together to try to say, hey, this one system over here, whether it be my labor management system, might be impacted by marketing or something. And it's bringing insights into this world of data that we live in, where as humans, we can only analyze so much, right? We can make pretty good decisions, but to have this eager assistant kind of, chirping in your ear over here to say, hey, I noticed that when there's a bad weather pattern, historically, you've got a 20% shortage of your labor force. You might want to pay attention to that in a couple of days.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Do you want more warehouse content delivered to your inbox? Sign up for our new email series called Warehouse Wisdom Wednesday to get an educational series of emails on warehouse basics delivered directly to you every Wednesday morning. Find the sign up link in the show notes. Yeah, very interesting there. I like the idea of the eager assistant as well. So, you mentioned they're kind of in this landscape, right? We're looking at in automation, and all this data that's around that we're trying to navigate through, or trying to make sense of, in a sense, or put it in some digestible format so that we can have that visibility. So what would you say, when we look at that? I mean, I think, in some aspects it can be somewhat daunting sometimes, in a sense, or the idea of bringing in automation in general can seem like a big step, right? Or a big project. So, I think that causes some hesitation sometimes for investing in automation's solution. So I'm curious, from both of your perspectives, I mean, what do you see in the market in terms of, that hesitation, and what's really causing that, not only for like the first timer that's going into automation, but then also someone that's, hesitant about, they made maybe a small investment in some automation, but now, they want to go a little deeper, but they're not quite sure how to scale it. What really drives some of that hesitation on that side?
So I'll take this one, and then Drew can add to that, because I think he has tremendous amount of
Sure.
stories to say. So some of the very normal challenges that we see, I'm going to just bring out two or three of them, and Drew has amazing story. So, we just think that we can bring in one machine or one robot, we'll set it, and then it starts working with one system. However, when you bring in that machine and the system, the very basic, simple challenge is incompatibility of that firmware with the software, because systems are going to get updated, right? And the reason that they're getting updated is because you want to make them more efficient. However, the dependency on these systems is super critical. You could be running a single version on one and another version on another, and they don't talk to each other. So suddenly you don't even have insights into what's going on, and the system is not doing the job it should be. Now imagine if from get-go, if you don't have insights into this problem, you are already hesitant. Oh, should I bring another machine or a few more? Because I don't know what just happened. That's just one part of it. The second one is when you do bring about a couple of them, and they're diverse in their workflow in terms of, one is AGV, one is a palletizer, one is also a cleaning robot in that whole place, right? And then they're all moving together, and suddenly a scissor lift comes in the middle of it, and there's an issue of collision. Could happen, may stop. Again, nobody knows why. There is no understanding of what just happened. And then when you're running all these different machines with systems, everybody wants the most efficient configuration, not a siloed configuration. You cannot have a software that has been designed for tote management and only does that work. And if you put in, oh, this tote can only carry 4 items. What's the size? What's the weight? Did we look into that? So now these are the challenges that are the use cases we've seen that seems to be resonating. And of course, there are many more, but I know Drew has seen these challenges in pretty massive way. So I'd really like Drew to go through each of them and talk about the stories and the challenges that he's seen, because they were incredible when we heard them.
Oh yeah, thank you, Nivedita. There are quite a few things that I've seen throughout my career for sure. I can go on with stories for days. The people that know me know that I don't stop talking a lot of times. The
I know
the
you, Drew.
version,
I know you.
yeah, I know, Kevin. We sit in places and talk for way too long. Um, the version control one is an interesting one, because most people, you see things moving around out on the factory floor, in the warehouse. There's physical components moving around, but a lot of times you don't think about the stuff you don't see, and that's behind the scenes. You've got two different things. You've got software versions, which is your programming, that might be your warehouse execution software, your control system, and you've got firmware versions, which are going to be at a lower level, small little programs that actually operate the unit, like the robot or the AGV or the carton pack or whatever it winds up being. And a couple of years ago, I saw a case where there's a robotic installation. Everything was running really well. And there was a new software update to be put in place. And they ran through a bunch of testing on the software, thought that everything was ready to go, and put the new version in place. And about 25% of the robot stopped functioning. And it took a few hours to really figure out why. And there was some small little nuance where the firmware in the robot that allowed it to communicate with the software that's supposed to tell it where to go, the navigation system, it locked up. And that was a pretty difficult time for the production of that facility, because they were down for about a day while versions were matched and things were rolled back. And it was a very unexpected occurrence that had happened. And when Nivedita and I had first met, we shared this exact story. And that was where we kind of got excited to be connected to each other, because she said that's one of the main things that Camet tries to deal with, is those unknown situations, to pay attention to. Okay, there's an update being pushed by a software team that might even be remote that could crash the system. And the risk monitor goes to a point that just says, hey, there's an update that's coming. Or an even more hidden one is expired certificates that happen a lot of times on these software packages. So there's licenses that are associated with maybe a dozen different software packages in a facility. So it's a hesitation for the operation to put automation in place, because there's all these things that they can't see, right? It's easy for them to kind of see and touch and feel a motor or a gearbox, or hear a chain that's kind of making noise, right? But a certificate that's going to expire in 3 weeks from now, that could crash their entire operation because it runs their warehouse management software, to make sure that someone pays that bill, I guess, if you want to say that, is a pretty important thing. And those are the types of things that Camet takes a look at, just the stuff that you wouldn't think about out in the operation. And then Nivedita had also said there's another story on the field of AMRs running around. We had an idea the other day so I saw one time where someone drove a scissor lift into an area where they weren't supposed to go into. It was an IT department working on some Ethernet switches overhead. And so they drove the scissor lift into the area where the robots, the AMRs, move around. And they didn't think anything of it, because there were no crashes. There were no like loud alarms that went off or anything. But after about 20, 30 minutes, the operations team is looking around going, where are our robots? We don't understand what's going on here. There's no movement. There's no product coming to us. This is a goods to person system. We don't have any goods coming to our people. And come to find out, they drove the scissor lift in, the robot saw it, and they all kind of stopped. And they were just stuck there. And if there was a tie-in to cameras in the facility to be able to monitor if things are in the area when they shouldn't be, forklifts are in the same places as robots or vice versa, then Camet can at least say, hey, something's out of place here. There might be an issue. There's someone that just drove an item past the area where it shouldn't be, before it becomes a stoppage in production, which is costing money. Go find out what's going on. You could have gone over there and very easily said, hey, we got to make sure we do some adjustment on the robot path, and then everything would have been fine. But they were down. They lost 30 minutes of production because of it. There's a lot of these types of stories that, as we started talking, that Camet could be your eyes and ears for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really interesting story there. And I think it is, I think you tied it up there nicely by saying, it's the eyes and the ears. And I think, you look at some of these facilities and especially if you're talking about having some automation involved, I mean, typically you're looking at a larger facility, right? And I mean, how do you, see everything that's going on everywhere? And like you said, you need something that's going to call that out, right? To be able to tell you, okay, there's something that needs to be addressed. How are we going to go after that? Point us in the direction of where we have issues, right? And then how do we tackle that, right? So really great stories there. And so I'm curious Nivedita, I mean, as we look at some of these issues that Drew was talking about, and obviously you mentioned, that, certainly the Camet solution is something that can help address some of those experiences that he saw in the past. Tell us a little bit about, what you saw and what your team saw, and, what kind of came to kind of the founding of Camet, and, what was that pain point that really stuck out to you, and you're like, we need to build something to address this?
Oh, that's a great question. So, the biggest reason why everybody is bringing in automation is not just because of labor force. It's because at the end of the day, it's all about ROI, right? It's understanding that when I'm making this heavy investment into machines and system, I need to have ROI that is better than when humans were running if I'm going to start replacing some of them with humans, right? And from our data sources, we found that actually operational challenges or failures, they tend to impact your annual revenue loss by 8%. That's pretty significant when you think
Yeah.
about it. Now, of course, one can start looking at it from, is it a downtime that's causing? Is it a failure that happened? The other big thing that came out also was because of downtime and failures, majority of the industry has been doing is they've been putting a lot of buffering. So in fact, we were talking to another system integrator, and they clearly said in the fleet that they were going to work, they probably had 25 robots. They were going to have two just as additional for buffering. So imagine if you have each robot is costing you $30,000, you put $60,000 just to buffer when you can actually take care of that whole thing and have efficiently run 27 robots in your system. And so it became very clear to us that every tool that is out there, it's after the fact. When does somebody know, oh, there is a scissor lift, and that is why my robots cannot move? Or, oh, there was a breakdown in the system, and that is why, something with the certificate expiration and the version control, oh, that's why there was an issue. Or, oh, the tote was designed for something with the goods coming to the person, but actually the whole design, the person is in so and so zone, but the design did not address when the person moved or something like that. The point is, everything is after the fact. When the failure happens, when the downtime happens, that's when you go to triage. Okay. Now, triages take too long because for triaging, you have disjointed systems. You are checking into a cloud system of a robot or that palletizer or the ASRS, or you have to go and check some other database tool or forecasting tool that you have, or a WMS or a MES, or even sometimes it was this Excel sheet and handwritten notes, right? So their disjointed system takes you for hours, in some cases days. So imagine how much you're losing till you don't figure out where the problem was. So instead of that, and we started seeing, and these are data which are old but shared with us. FedEx, for example, says every minute the package is not delivered, it starts costing them $15,000 per minute. In automotive, every time there's a downtime in the line, it starts costing them $22,000 per minute. So these are pretty large numbers. And now if you think about it, even if you had a 45 minutes or an hour of downtime, right? Plus, yeah, somebody will say, oh yeah, but I've buffered it. Yeah, so you put in extra cost in buffering plus this downtime. So that's where we said, if you were to start looking, if you brought in 500 robots and you were looking to make it efficient, with our tool, you can actually start saving, and minimizing these downtime costs that you are embarking. And so from our standpoint, this is an AI tool that gives you visibility immediately into issues before they become a failure. That's what we say. And our goal here is, or we can pretty well establish that using our tool, you can avoid revenue loss of up to $1 million per incident, making this assumption that the incident takes about good 5 hours to just figure out where the problem initiated from. And then, of course, you have to go about finding a fix for it. Then you've got to verify if the fix is fine or no. So it's a pretty long down process. It's like the root mean analysis kind of thing. So in that aspect, where we came, we said, let's just make it more efficient, because at the end of the day, when you talk to DHLs of the world, everybody says they're running a tightrope. They need to be efficient. And that's where we came in. The other thing that I do want to say is, in some cases, because of so much of fragmentation, industry is tending to just narrow down solution with one or two robotic manufacturers and one or two system integrations or systems like a WMS or MES. Now, that's because they are afraid when they bring in too many different systems, they are afraid of exactly the problem that we're talking about. They're siloed, they do not help us. And then when a failure happens, I don't know how to solve it. So one other thing is, at the end of the day, everybody wants to be efficient. So companies and customers should have the flexibility to choose any kind of system that works best for them, not what is being prescribed to them by a certain OEM or a certain system. So that is also the goal for us, making it in a way which is really best suited for the end customer. And something that I learned from Drew, I think, and he can answer more, he says, when I go and design, I think of it as how I would design for myself. It's like my own business. And I think that is exactly the mindset we want to create when we are building this. What works best for you? Let's not just take, just because somebody did something in Pepsi, I want to just copy paste that to another bottling plant. So what are the KPIs that you're looking for, and how you want to make it more efficient?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I love there that you said, you can develop the system and systems together to put that right mix together for you and for your operation. And, no operation is really copy and paste, right, in that sense. And, I'm curious, Drew, from your perspective, as you've gone out there and done projects and you've seen this, and I know you put different solutions together. I mean, how is kind of bringing that cohesiveness together and that extra level of visibility, I mean, how does that drive extra value to the end users at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think that the audience here, one of the things that I'd like to do is to say, hey, step back and kind of imagine a point in time when there was an unforeseen challenge that happened, whether it be in the operation, just in the supply chain in general. That's where you can kind of get creative with things like this, and to be able to minimize the impact, and, as Nivedita said, be proactive instead of reactive to the situation, to try to look down the road for something coming. I saw an article this morning that was about customs paperwork for containers coming in. And it got me thinking about Camet. I thought, hey, I recently had an issue to where I had one of my machines to get installed in the facility that was coming from overseas get held up for about 7 days at the port for some unknown reasons, because someone should have filed some paperwork, not that day, but it had to be filed like 10 days earlier, 15 days earlier. So it took a while to process. Simple things like that is just tying all this data together. That's kind of a blank slate. You can almost do what you want, you can imagine to do with it. It's just a matter of connecting the dots between them. We had a project about 20 years ago where we were doing the installation of a bunch of conveyor for a bottling line in the winery. And we had taken a bunch of time sequencing everything out and staging the orders of the deliveries. Because I think on that job, we had about 100 trucks that were going to show up with all of our different components for the project. And so we took a lot of time to sequence all of those things. And we got to a point about 75% of the way into the project, and we were missing some conveyor. And the team that we had on it had been logging and staging everything that came in along the way. And they said, wait a minute, we're missing 2 skids. We don't know, they should be over here in the sequence. We go over there, there's not anything there. Come to find out, the truck didn't pull up as part of the sequence, and we didn't know where it was. And this was 20 years ago, so you wouldn't have the communication ability that we do today, right? Where we could track everything. Come to find out, it was the wintertime, and there was one of our suppliers was sending a truck over the mountains, over the pass through the Rocky Mountains. And it got in an accident. And so then we had to scramble to go take a look at the conveyor to see what was damaged. Fortunately, it wasn't bad. We were able to ship it to the site, but this delayed our installation by like 5 days, which then pushes back on the tail end of it. Either somebody's paying for overtime to shorten that timeline, or the customer or the end user at that point in time agrees, okay, we're gonna extend out the deadline of this thing, simply because there was bad weather that we weren't thinking about, because it was a truck that had been scheduled to go that way. And something paying attention to weather patterns again, and a lot of the nuances of data, the truck actually, Camet Nivedita could share that is working with connecting to like the low level systems in the truck. So, tire pressures and the fuel and things like that to try to optimize when things get there would have really saved us a bunch, as an example, on that project. So I wanted to just say to the audience, don't think about just inside the warehouse when it comes to Camet. There's a lot of data in the entire supply chain that affects a lot of the operation in the end of the day that we touch.
So what Drew's been talking about is, especially in the warehouse, we're dependent on freight, right? At the end of the day, from a distribution center to a store or to a manufacturing unit, wherever, the freight trucks are arriving. Now, while the freight trucks have the need to, carry a certain load, we're also impacted by a couple of other situations. One is the load in the truck has to be taken over a certain types of roads. What does that mean? It's highways, interstates, rural roads. So there's a speed limit. At the same time, there's the impact of climate. I mean, if something is coming from Wisconsin or Michigan in the winter time, there's sleet, there's ice. So there's a time-bound pressure to bring these goods into your distribution center. So with this weight, along with the climatic condition, how should we make the truck more efficient so that you still try to get your goods on time? And another big thing that is there, and sometimes we don't look at it, is the fuel economy, because you want to be driving these trucks safe, and you want to make sure you're also getting them in time. And at the same time, so many freight trucks out there, it is a cost, right? You're running so much of diesel. And if you get into automated trucks, autonomous trucks in the future, which is not very far, you're going to have battery impact, right? So that is what we are doing, where our goal is to make sure you get the right amount of weight with the right speed. And also every state has their permits. So you want to make sure you're permitted, you have the right permits. And then with the given climatic condition, we make sure we are efficiently making your freight come to you. So that is an AI model that we've been working on. And yeah, if anybody wants to use that, see that, feel free. So that is where our focus is. It's end to end. It is from outside, coming on public roads, then into the yard, and then finally inside the warehouse or the manufacturing or the operation.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I think it's great to look at it from that entire kind of ecosystem approach, right? Because I think overall what you're trying to do is, bring in all of these different factors that can cause inefficiency, disruption, have some risk tied to them potentially, and make sure that, basically all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, in a sense, right? Through this one platform, to be able to see that instead of having to, traverse through multiple sets of data like we talked about in the beginning there, and all these different systems that may revolve around this as well. So I think it's really interesting, that approach, and kind of bringing it all together into one point, just as it kind of physically comes all into one point as well, right? That freight is coming in and it's all conversing into that one operation there, and then ultimately going out the door again. But we need to bring all the things that support that together as well. So very interesting there. So we titled this Maximizing Your Automation Investment. I think we've talked a lot about kind of, creating those efficiencies, bringing better visibility into all the different systems that you may have operating, or all the different inputs or factors that are going into making that operation run. But I'm curious, as we look at these types of things, and, as people start to think about whether it's scaling the automation they already have, or it's scaling their operation further, or it's just, taking that first step into bringing some more automation in, how can Kamek kind of help them to give that visibility and help them have a little more, I guess, assurance in a sense on that investment that they're going to make? Niveta, do you want to start off with that one?
Sure. So the biggest differentiation that I want to bring out is when we talk about issues and challenges, when you hear the word downtime or failures, in generally it's very linear or just like dual coordinates. Folks think of their safety when there's machines, or then there's security because they are connected, right? Today, the truth is that issues can come from anything. And so we, in our case, have redefined what the world of issues mean, which is the uniqueness, making it very easy for anybody from the VP of operations all the way to the operators can easily understand where the anomalies are. So what we've done is we're looking at it from 4 or 5 different ways. Of course, there's safety and security. We look at it from mechanical breakdowns. We look at it from environmental challenges. And we also look at it from human challenges. And so we are really scanning and doing a triangulation, as we say it, across humans, machines, and systems. And the way we've designed it is our goal is to reduce your anomalies by 30%, because currently you're spending over, anywhere between 5 hours to a couple of days when you're trying to figure out where the issue happened, because you have to go through a monitoring system. And the way we've designed our scorecard, it's very simplistic, using the traffic light mechanism. So even if somebody who's new into the organization can immediately understand where the issue is happening, and they can raise the alarm to the administration in the operations team, and across the operation chain, they can take action. So the goal here is that when the VP of operations or the CEO is in the board meeting, they can absolutely go and present or show the dashboard with the return on investment, because we are absolutely capturing that and giving them complete insight into saying, hey, this is what I invested and this is the savings you can start seeing. It's almost like giving the COO the operationals tool that they need to justify anything, just like the CFO has their financial tool. This is that tool for the operating team. And that makes it so much more powerful for the whole operation team to now be empowered in terms of what they can deliver for the organization. And like I also say, don't think of AI taking away anybody's job. No, this AI is all about making it much more efficient. In fact, we're being empathetic to the operators. That's what we would say.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic thing. And I think that's one of the things that caught my attention when we first started talking, was certainly the visibility further into that actual ROI, or the cost of potential downtime. And I think that's such a great thing there, to be able to see that and really understand, like, how this investment is performing, and are we actually getting the ROI that we thought we were going to get? Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? What can we change to be able to do that? And how can we justify, maybe we got some AMRs and, we got a couple units, but ultimately, we need to scale that further. Does that give us that visibility and that proof to be able to continue and invest further in that? So Drew, I'm curious from that same perspective. I mean, how do you see this? And, as you work with your customers, right, like how do you see Kamet kind of being a tool that can help them, justify going further on projects or scaling maybe faster than they would otherwise?
Yeah, I think that the maximizing the investment of the automation, Kevin, a lot of it's about minimizing the disruptions from the automation that was put in place. And that's where this visibility comes into play. Quite oftentimes, we do projects where we have a whole team of engineers assigned to the project to execute things, to meet certain deliverables, to get the system up and running in an efficient manner. It's quite often that we finish the project, the folks have left site, everything's been checked off. At least we have gone through to the best of our ability to make sure that the system is up and running. And 6 months down the road, a year down the road, a new product type is attempted to be put in the system that happens to go outside of the specifications as far as the dimensions go. Let's just say it's a case, right? And so the case is a pound too heavy for the robot arm. And then it stops, causes a production problem. That's having an impact on your payback on this automation system that you put in place, simply because there was a lack of awareness that maybe this new product would cause an impact into the system. And sure, you've got all sorts of criteria that we put in place. We share all that stuff with the end users, with the operations team. But it's difficult to think about every single nuance about whether each part of the system will fit the different dimensions and weights or this style of product or whatever, as well as monitoring long-term maintenance. So typically it's not the initial investment, it's down the road when the system's been in operation for a while that I see Kamet really bringing a lot of value and being able to be that insight into, hey, things are wearing out. Some of the stuff might be not in its optimum position anymore. What that robot arm that used to be palletizing at 500 is palletizing at 450 an hour. But nobody's necessarily noticing that because no one's really monitoring every little KPI that exists out there.
Yeah.
That's where I see Kamet coming in to help maximize that investment, is just bringing awareness to things that we might not think about.
Great. Yeah. And I think that awareness is such a big thing to be able to call out those things. So we give one more chance to the audience here to raise their hand and ask a question. I do have a question that came in here via message, and this one is for Nivedita specifically. And Drew, I think you could chime in on this too. I know you have some thoughts on AI, but the question is, we're hearing in the press that AI suffers from so-called hallucinations. That is, you can't always trust it. So concerns have been raised about safety. How do you ensure that Kamet's predictive AI doesn't lead to more operational problems than it solves? Can it be trusted to automatically change machine configurations?
So, no, that's a great question. So, the way we've been working, one of the sweet spot is we've been doing what we call as vertical AI, and it's really proprietary. Why is it proprietary? Because especially in the initial stages, we are working with a couple of OEMs, and we are only utilizing the data from them and the data from the systems that they are going to talk to. And in our minds, calibration is a big challenge. So even though I'm giving them an AI model, I do know that we have to constantly keep it updated with new data or even new calibrations so that we don't fall into the trap that you're talking about. So we are very aware of it. And the models get better only when there is enough data. And I would also say, the use case that Drew just mentioned, you had a certain cycle time, but it suddenly dropped. That data is super important to understand where the gap is or what changed. And this is normal. There's a use case, I think Drew had brought it up, which I use it pretty often. Marketing decided that in a wine industry, the bottle should change now, and suddenly a new designed model is coming, and everybody in the operations team is like, wow, nobody was aware of it. Now, if you're going to make some changes, that whole configuration needs to be revamped to accommodate that. So these kind of data is where we are focused on. So safety is a given in the industry. So it's not like we're taking safety lightly. For us, it is really constantly updating the AI to meet the needs of the customer. So we are not an open AI kind of a solution. It is very, very proprietary for the customer.
Okay. And Drew, what do you think there? I know you got some thoughts on AI yourself.
Absolutely. I love this question because this is one of those things where the general public, even a lot of very smart people, are kind of it's a bit misleading, the AI term, because it's a really broad term. And the question generally comes about from the standpoint of being able to trust your large language models, which are things like ChatGPT and Claude and those types of things that have now become prevalent in our lives and people see them all the time. Yeah, that type of AI, the large language model, uses what's called a transformer and vector databases to be able to kind of associate words together in a sentence. It's a little bit different than a machine learning type of AI, which has actually been used in our industry for quite a while now. A lot of folks don't realize how much the machine learning model has been adapted through various different systems that are out there. And that effectively just takes an input, runs it through a bunch of math. I'm not going to get into geeking out on vector matrix multiplication and stuff here. And then it spits out the an expected result. Some of the most basic things are trying to just simply identify if it's a picture of a cat or a dog and someone saying yes it is or no it isn't. But on the machine learning side of things, simply monitoring the data and associating what happened in the past with what might happen in the future, so it's a predictive analytics, is a little bit different than what I would say connecting a ChatGPT to your order management system in your warehouse and then expecting to run production off of saying, hey, what was our most profitable day last month? You may or may not get the right answer out of that. There are two different types of parts of AI, I guess I would say.
All right, very interesting there, and good to hear that too on the security and safety side there, Nivedita, that you mentioned. So I want to thank both Nivedita and Drew for joining in today and having this discussion, super insightful around all these points around automation, systems, just in general, the operation overall, and really kind of figuring out how to see that visibility and get some visibility into making sure that operation is healthy from all the little pieces to the biggest pieces in action as well. So great explanations on everything here. And thank you to everybody tuning in here as well. But as we close out here, Nivedita, if people want to learn more about Kamit AI, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can just reach out to us at info at kamit.ai. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. Also follow us on our LinkedIn webpage, Kamit AI. So there are many ways. And just if nothing else, if you think we don't listen to you, send us a reminder through Kevin. Believe me, we always listen to Kevin. And we just launched our MVP. So you can come and ask for a demo. We can start showing you that and seeing how it works in your environment. And we also have partnerships that we're working with. So there are many ways to reach out. And you can always reach out to me directly.
All right, fantastic. And Drew, what's the best way to get in touch with you and Onero?
As folks that have been in touch with me realize that I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So usually that's one of the best ways to contact me. Just reach out, connect. I'll generally accept most of them. If I miss it, go ahead and bug me. I'm fine with that. My email is my name, Drew, at onero-tech.com. But you can also send a general email to info@onero-tech.com. But generally, just send me something on LinkedIn. 95% of the time I'll say, I'll get back to you. So
All right. 95% is that KPI there. We see response time. Got it. All right,
Yeah.
cool. And thank you to Drew and Nivedita again for being the guest and sharing some insights with us. Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.